Hey guys, welcome back to Affirmaday Workout with Helen Chen. So today, as you can see, we are doing a screenshot from 2001 Space Odyssey. And of course, there was no way I was gonna do this workout series without something from 2001. It's too iconic of a film, especially for its visual aspects. So here we go. And I chose this frame because I'm kind of a sucker for these reflections and screen effects. So I'll talk through how I would handle something like this in this image. And like always, even though I always say we're not really here to try and figure out, like, do portrait painting or do any like specific kind of making sure we get the likeness of stuff, because this guy's face takes up most of the frame, I spent a little bit more time on the underdrawing just to like nail everything so that we would be able to get, you know, close. I'm still not expecting it to turn out really that well. I'm just not a portrait painter, but you know, the general gist of it, I think we can get. So I'm not going to pretend I understand 2001. I really don't. It's very striking. It's such a unique piece of media and film. But there's no denying just how powerful it is and how it's kind of like stayed in everybody's like mind, you know. And anybody who's interested in film knows about this film or has looked at it. It's just very, very striking. I mean, I really love even how it's so pervasive that they even kind of almost verbatim lifted one of the set, like the look of a set from this movie in Tron, the new Tron movies. So, or movie, I guess. They never made the sequel, but it's just really, really striking, and it still holds up today because of how striking the imagery is, and it still feels futuristic, even though I mean, we're 20 years past 2001 and life is not like this yet. So, you know, it's just, if you haven't seen it, I really do recommend it. You might be like me and not really know what to do with it. Like, I don't really understand it, but it's just a very interesting ride. I'm sure there are people out there who totally get it and like know all of the symbolism and all of that jazz, but I just don't. But what I love particularly about this screen is because it's like there's also this effect of it being, especially these older movies, I just love when they feel like they're really being filmed on like real film. Like nowadays, you know, things are digital, but there are ways to kind of fake being like, you know, actually printed on film and getting that film grain and things like that, which is fine. But there's just something about movies from this era or before where it's the way that kind of, you can see how on the edges there, it's not pure black. It's like this kind of like dark greenish thing, and it's because it's still catching some haze and air in between, and it's just that quality that I really love. And that's part of the reason why I always add film grain to all of my paintings as well, is I just like that look. It just really feels like film to me. So, but in this image, like I said, you know, I'm going to try and get the likeness as much as possible, but it might not be you know, the best. But I think the first thing I always try to do when I am trying to do something like a face is just capture the big planes of it. So that's what I'm kind of trying to do now, is I'm trying to pick that, it looks actually too light at this moment, but there will be chances kind of deepen it out. I'm more or less trying to just figure out the planar shapes of what the shadows and lights are doing. And because he's pretty underlit, I'm kind of just going in and staking out in my brain, like where the upward facing planes that are going to be darker are, and then the lower facing planes are going to be lighter because that's where the light source is. And then on top of that, you know, we have all of those kind of reflections and stuff that we'll have to get into. So it's another reason not to be too, not to labor too much on the face here, because it will be obscured by a lot, actually. So just getting the main planes in there is going to be the most important part. So you can kind of tell that I'm not like really used to this. I don't paint a lot of realistic faces. But my advice for people who kind of want to learn this or how to approach kind of digital painting in this way is really just trying to nail the shadow versus light shapes. Like treating kind of like graphic shapes on the face is going to help you the most. Because I find, especially when it comes to like rendering and digital painting, sometimes weirdly for me, if I try to go tighter, I actually lose the likeness, and it's harder. It's easier to capture the likeness for me sometimes if I just stay a little bit looser. And I think it's because this is my own personal theory for me is I kind of feel like I get too caught up in like small shapes and that are spaced not correctly. You know, like you have to be very exact with them. And so the more you have of those small shapes, like right now I'm working on the eye, for example, like if I had a bunch of those small shapes around the face, like getting all of the subtle transitions and stuff like that, and they were off, it just takes away from the likeness. So if you were to say looser and to be more specific with the larger shapes, it's easier to kind of capture the likeness in that way. So another thing I kind of like to do is I like to use, this is why I kind of like the brush that I use. It's because if I really want a soft edge, I can get that through just my strokes and not really have to worry about getting something to kind of like transition or blend. That's really easy to achieve with this brush. But if I were to size it down and just press really hard, it gives like a really crisp line as well, so I can get a hard edge. So that's another thing that's really important when it comes to doing more of these like slightly more, I guess you would call them gestural or like loose paintings, is using like the qualities of the brush, how hard the edge is and how soft it is, to get across more information than you would get otherwise. Or like, you know, using the benefits of the brush so that you have to do less rendering basically and have to like, you know, make sure everything is so smooth or whatever, because the kind of brushiness of the brush kind of helps you kind of like get away with like feeling like there's more information there than there really is. So that's kind of what I'm relying on right now. So I have my major kind of like shapes blocked out, especially for the darks, and now I'm just trying to like get the right values in there, and I'm going a little bit slowly because I am kind of unsure about doing a portraiture because I just haven't done it in a while. So like I was saying about the small shapes, it's going to be really important here in the nose. I feel like because the nose is so center, literally in this frame, they actually do a lot to kind of like, you know, convince you of or against, you know, this guy's likeness. So I'm trying really hard to be mindful of that as I'm painting. Trying to, you know, get approximate shapes with my brush, but keeping it loose so that there isn't that expectation of it being super tight and perfect. I'm also, I've been doing these and just doing my own paintings for long enough where I can kind of guess how colors will react based on stuff that I want to do them later. Like I know there's going to be some reflections on the helmet and some overall kind of like atmospheric light in here that I'm going to end up putting in that will adjust the values. So in some cases, like especially on the nose and the mouth area, I'm going maybe a little bit darker than I would because I know it's going to even out later. And plus, no matter what you do, it's better to do something right away and have it be wrong and you can see where it's wrong and come back and fix it later than trying to perfect it right away, like before you get to the end. So I treat everything kind of like I would oil painting, where nothing is final until like I look at the whole thing, and then from there, Photoshop is just so flexible. Like you can change anything, colors, values, whatever you need to get it to be more exact. But it's way more important to just get something down on the canvas. I think this is going to be the first eyeball I paint in this series, and probably the last. That's actually when I talk about not being good at portraits, it's mainly because of the eyes. Like I've always, even when I was taking classes in fine arts at like in art school, like doing oil paintings from life, things like that, it was a very rare day that I would actually nail the eyes and get the shape of them correct, etc. So it's like it's just it's a little bit of one of my more scared to approach things. Oh yeah, and then finally putting the eyebrows in, which does wonders. It was looking so weird and off, like I was trying to like paint that purple guy from Avenger Vision or something up until, and then now putting the eyebrows in, it finally starts looking like a human being. So another kind of thing I use to just mask the fact that I don't want to go too exact in with the likeness and things like that is keeping my strokes kind of straight. It's also kind of a, like I said, it's like it's a bit of a, you know, um, I don't know what to call it, like a stylistic choice, I guess, that is a holdover from my oil painting days. It was really like in style at the school I was at and the class I was at the time to do a lot of portrait paintings using only like short, straight, kind of like graphic strokes to create images. And I think it's like, I think that's why I still do it to this day, is because that's just how I learned it. But the another benefit of that is you can write off any like likeness discrepancies to like a style choice versus just not capturing the likeness, you know? And so the more graphic I get to keep the strokes, the more I get to get away with it. So I'm kind of feeling like most of the faces there. I know that there's going to be so much obscuring with the other stuff. I'm not going to worry too much about it. One of the things that I do want to kind of get the feeling of is the kind of just the feeling of this face kind of emerging from the darkness of the helmet. So I'm going to go in with like a soft round brush, maybe on like a multiply layer, and just darken down some of the surrounding area so it feels like occlusion almost. And that's why I like using this really brushy brush to preserve a lot of the brush strokes, and then using like the soft round brush to try and get some of that soft transition that still lets some of the brushwork peek through and keep things really kind of loose. So after, the face is basically there, likeness is here or there. It's pretty okay. It doesn't really matter. But after tying up these few last things, it's time to think about doing the screen effects. And the screen effects, I kind of, it's very similar to what we've done before. It's going to be a combination of screen adjustment layers plus overlay adjustment layers on top of that, and maybe some lighten depending on how I want it to read. So it's going to be a combo of those three things. But what I'm going to try and do is kind of hand paint them. And then especially for some of the ones that feel like duplicates or kind of like a light that's reflected, the same light reflected almost 3 times in a row, kind of like towards the edges of the helmet, I'm actually going to try and replicate that by doing a stroke and then, duplicating the layers and sliding it a little bit just to, get that effect across. So I just start kind of broadly painting in the reflections at full opacity because I'm going to use, either a mask or this layer opacity thing later to kind of adjust the intensity of it. But for now, I'm just going to put down big shapes and colors of these light shapes that I feel like they would be if they were like on full blast and not slightly, like softened and occluded like they are in the reference image. So especially here on the side, I'm like realizing that it's actually almost like the same light that's been duplicated like 4 times. So I'm just going to do that instead and get that more, and it makes it feel almost more mechanical or something, like the reflection is just something that you like physically get from either the camera or the reflection of it or the glass or something like that. So I'm basically marking in one of each of those shapes. And then I'm going to, actually duplicate the layer and slide it. So that's what I'm planning for. That's why you see me not trying to capture all of those tiny strokes. So now that I have all of the lights laid out, I'm gonna reorganize. I'm gonna deal with how these big middle ones end up looking first. So what I'm gonna try and do to get the smeared effect is to blur the whole thing and then do a bit of a motion blur on it as well, so that it feels like it doesn't, so it softens out and it doesn't feel quite as blocky as I once had it. I'm going to play with the layer settings to get the right layer adjustments, probably lighten the screen. And then I'm gonna, use a mask to paint out where it is softer and where it kind of fades away and things like that, and where it's more intense. And it's okay. It's not about getting it exact. When the whole image is finished, like people would have to put up your image and the reference image to pick out all of the nitty-gritty details that are different. But it's more about just getting the spirit of this thing across. So now I'm going to duplicate the layers and set it to overlay, just to be able to kind of like figure and play with the opacity of both to get, you know, the right amount of reflection and glow. Or, you know, close enough just to get that effect so it doesn't feel like I just slap some paint on and turn the opacity down. Like it truly feels a little bit more like a reflection when you do that. And now I'm going to deal with the outer kind of reflective pieces. So like I said, I only drew kind of one stroke for each set, and then I'm going to apply the same exact process. The only difference now is after I kind of get it to where I want it, I'll duplicate the layers, and I'm transforming it here and slightly offsetting it so it does that kind of like effect where it's the same light reflection, but it's like staggered, you know? And then that way I'm not on the hook for like drawing each exact one and trying to get it to look right. And this way it almost feels more, just because of the fact that they are the same stroke that's duplicated, it feels almost more mechanical or correct for some reason. So that's what I'm gonna kind of do for all of these like outer rim kind of like reflections. Same process for these guys. Again, duplicating, kind of transforming a little bit, offsetting just to get the kind of like duplicate look to go. And then the last step I'm going to do is paint in some of these kind of random reflections here and there, like that red there, and some of the ones that are peeking at the bottom as well. And then for the most part, I feel like this image is there. There's still some reflections happening, especially over his eye that I have to get in. But I'm pretty happy with like the intensity and how the reflections have turned out so far. Here we are kind of dealing with that the real reason I kind of did this reflection last is because it is softer. It's almost like there's different, it's kind of like, you know, there's just different layers, like different, it was probably just farther away or a different light source or something like that. That's reflecting in a different way. So if I feel like there's a different quality of reflection from something, I tend to just separate, for my own kind of process, I separate them. So I do the hard light ones first and then the soft ones later, or vice versa. It doesn't matter. Just making sure that I keep those two processes separately in case I want to play with, you know, a different technique for each. Doing is I'm trying to there's like this very subtle like overall kind of atmospheric thing that I was talking about before, and it has to do with the way that film grain captures light and atmosphere and things like that. So it's really subtle, but I'm kind of trying to play up some of those things And that way it just ends up feeling a little bit more atmospheric. I know it's strange to say atmospheric when it kind of feels like such a close-up shot and there's just not much atmosphere there, but trust me, there is. So, and it'll really go a long way in making this feel like a film frame instead of like, that's the other thing is that I always like to kind of abuse atmosphere in my paintings just because I feel like it makes things feel more cinematic if everything is crisp and hard edged, especially when you're trying to go for like a CG animated look. This does not apply to like more graphic TV or 2D animation or things like that. It tends to look a little fakey almost, or more like illustration or things like that. And I think every little bit that lends into my VizDev paintings feeling a little bit more like film, I try to do, because that is the kind of express purpose we're doing them, like VizDev is for film, not for illustration. So that's why I kind of like to, even in this image, it's not quite maybe as apparent, but I am going to be doing some light washes of kind of like, especially here with the green, just of maybe going a little saturated, but then like putting a layer on and then toning it down. So it just feels like there's like a layer of atmosphere there kind of over the entire thing, and it makes it feel like this was really filmed on film, And that about wraps it up for today's workout. Thanks so much, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.